Awakened Imagination, The Consciousness of the Atom by Alice A. Bailey. In this profound exploration, Bailey delves into the intricate connection between science and consciousness, offering a unique perspective on how the fundamental building blocks of the universe relate to our own inner experiences and spiritual growth. Through her insightful analysis, Bailey bridges the gap between the physical and the metaphysical, presenting a compelling case for the unity of all life. In this audiobook, you'll discover the deep philosophical implications of atomic science and its correlation to human consciousness. Bailey's visionary work encourages us to reconsider our understanding of reality, urging us to awaken to a higher level of awareness and potential. As we journey through this enlightening text, prepare to expand your mind and open your heart to the possibilities that lie within and beyond the material world. Stay with us till the end for a transformative experience that might change the way you perceive your existence and the universe. If you enjoy this audiobook, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more insightful content that bridges science and spirituality.
Consciousness of the Atom by Alice A. Bailey is a super cool book that explores what reality is all about. Bailey talks about atoms and how they have their own kind of consciousness. It's like she's connecting science and spirituality together. She wants us to understand the hidden forces that shape our world, even at the tiniest level. Bailey's writing is really smart and helps us see how everything in life is connected, even the smallest particles. This book is like a guide for people who want to understand life better and have a more open mind. If you're into mysteries and want to learn about atoms and consciousness, you should totally check out The Consciousness of the Atom. It's a mind-blowing journey into the world of metaphysics. Greetings, esteemed listeners. Embark on an enlightening voyage into the realm of The Power of the Consciousness of the Atom by Alice A. Bailey. Join us as we delve into this transformative exploration, unveiling the profound insights within Bailey's work that transcend the boundaries of conventional understanding. Foreword. The lectures here presented were delivered in New York during the past winter. The purpose of this series was to present to their auditors the testimony of science as to the relation of matter and of consciousness, to enable the hearers to observe the identical manifestation of these relations, and of certain basic laws in successively higher states of being, and thus to bring to them a realization of the universality of the evolutionary process and its actuality, and to deal somewhat with the nature of the expanded states of consciousness and the enlarged life toward which all mankind is traveling. They thus were intended to serve as an introduction to the more detailed study and application of the laws of life and human unfoldment, generally included in the term of occultism. It will be observed that there is in this series a considerable amount of repetition, as each lecture briefly reviews the matters covered in the preceding addresses. As newcomers were present at each lecture in the series, it was found necessary on each occasion to present a bird's-eye view of the ground covered and the reasons for the position then taken. A further advantage was found in the fixing in the minds of the hearers of certain of these basic concepts which were new to many of them, and which helped to enable them to grasp and to receive readily the further expansion of the theme. In presenting the lectures in book form, it has been deemed advisable to retain the complete text of the lectures as given. Those who are already students of the esoteric wisdom will be able to follow the line of the argument of the lectures without difficulty. For those, however, who for the first time approach the consideration of the matters here discussed, the occasional repetition of the fundamental points may help to a ready apprehension, and it is for this class of readers that the book is primarily intended. Alice A. Bailey, September 1922. Lecture 1. The Field of Evolution. There has probably never been a period in the history of thought entirely resembling the present. Thinkers everywhere are conscious of two things. First, that the region of mystery has never before been so clearly defined, and secondly, that region can be entered more easily than has hitherto been the case. It may therefore perhaps be induced to render up some of its secrets if investigators of all schools pursue their search with determination. The problems with which we are faced, as we study the known facts of life and existence, are susceptible of clearer definition than heretofore, and though we do not know the answer to our questions, though we have not as yet discovered the solution to our problems, though no panacea lies ready to our hand whereby we can remedy the world's ills. Yet the very fact that we can define them, that we can point in the direction in which mystery lies, and that the light of science, of religion, and of philosophy has been shed upon vast tracts which were earlier considered lands of darkness, is a guarantee of success in the future. We know so much more than was the case 500 years ago, except in a few circles of wise men and mystics. We have discovered so many laws of nature, even though as yet we cannot apply them, and the knowledge of things as they are, and I choose these words very deliberately, has made immense strides. Nevertheless, the mystery land still remains to be opened up, and our problems are still numerous. There is the problem of our own particular life, whatever that may be. There is the problem of that which is largely termed the not-self, and which concerns our physical body, our environment, our circumstances, and our life conditions. If we are of an introspective turn of mind, there is the problem of our particular set of emotions, and of the thoughts, desires, and instincts by which we control action. Group problems are many. Why should there be suffering, starvation, and pain? Why should the world as a whole be in the thrall of the direst poverty, of sickness, of discomfort? What is the purpose underlying all that we see around us? And what will be the outcome of world affairs, viewing them as a whole? What is the destiny of the human race? What is its origin? And what is the key to its present condition? Is there more than this one life? And is the sole interest to be found in that which is apparent and material? Such queries pass through all our minds at various times, and have passed through the minds of thinkers right down through the centuries. There have been many attempts to reply to these questions, and as we study them, we find that the answers given fall into three main groups, and that three principal solutions are held out for the consideration of men. These three solutions are: first, realism. Another name for this school is that of materialism. It teaches that the presentation which we have in consciousness of an external world is true, that things are what they seem, that matter and force, as we know them, are the only reality, and that it is not possible for man to get beyond the tangible. He should be satisfied with facts as he knows them, or as science tells him they are. This is a perfectly legitimate method of solution, but for some of us it fails in that it does not go far enough. In refusing to concern itself with anything except that which can be proven and demonstrated, it stops short at the very point where the inquirer says, "That is so. But why?" It leaves out of its calculation much that is known and realized as truth by the average man, even though he may be unable to explain why he knows it to be true. Men everywhere are recognizing the accuracy of the facts of the realistic school and of material science, yet at the same time they feel innately that there is, underlying the proven objective manifestation, some vitalizing force, and some coherent purpose which cannot be accounted for in terms of matter alone. Secondly, there is the point of view which we can best perhaps call supernaturalism. Man becomes conscious that perhaps after all things are not exactly what they seem to be, and that there remains much which is inexplicable. He awakens to the realization that he himself is not simply an accumulation of physical atoms, a material something and a tangible body, but that latent within him is a consciousness, a power, and a psychic nature which link him to all other members of the human family, and to a power outside himself which he must perforce explain. This it is which has led, for instance, to the evolution of the Christian and Jewish point of view, which posits a God outside the solar system, who created it, but was himself extraneous to it. These systems of thought teach that the world has been evolved by a power or being who has built the solar system, and who guides the worlds aright, keeping our little human life in the hollow of his hand, and sweetly ordering all things according to some hidden purpose which it is not possible for us, with our finite minds, to glimpse, still less to understand. This is the religious and supernatural point of view, and is based on the growing self-consciousness of the individual, and in a recognition of his own divinity. Like the point of view of the realistic school, it embodies only a partial truth, and needs to be complemented. The third line of thought we might call the idealistic. It posits an evolutionary process within all manifestation, and identifies life with the cosmic process. It is the exact opposite of materialism, and brings the supernatural deity, predicated by the religionist, into the position of a great entity or life, who is evolving through and by means of the universe, just as man is evolving consciousness through the medium of an objective physical body. In these three standpoints, the frankly materialistic, the purely supernatural, and the idealistic, you have the three main lines of thought which have been put forward as explanatory of the cosmic process. All of them are partial truths, yet none of them is complete without the others. All of them, when followed alone, lead into byways and into darkness, and leave the central mystery still unsolved. When synthesized, when brought together and blended, and when unified, they embody, perhaps, I offer this simply as a suggestion, just as much of the evolutionary truth as it is possible for the human mind to grasp at the present stage of evolution. We are dealing with large problems, and tampering perhaps with high and lofty things. We are trespassing into regions which are the recognized domain of metaphysics, and we are endeavoring to sum up in a few brief talks what all the libraries of the world are embodying. We are therefore attempting the impossible. All that we can do is to take up briefly and cursorily first one aspect of the truth and then another. All we can possibly accomplish is an outline of the basic lines of evolution, a study of their relationship to each other and to ourselves as conscious entities, and then an endeavor to blend and synthesize the little we can know until some general idea of the process as a whole becomes clearer. We have to remember in connection with every statement of truth that each is made from a particular point of view. Until we have further developed our mental processes, and until we are able to think in abstract terms as well as in concrete, it will not be possible for us to fully answer the question, what is truth? Nor to express any aspect of that truth in a perfectly unbiased way. Some people have a wider horizon than others, and some can see the unity underlying the differing aspects. Others are prone to think that their outlook and interpretation is the only one. I hope in these talks to broaden somewhat our point of view. I hope we shall come to the realization that the man who is only interested in the scientific aspect, and who confines himself to the study of those manifestations which are purely material, is just as much occupied with the study of the divine as is his frankly religious brother, who only concerns himself with the spiritual side, and that the philosopher is, after all, occupied in emphasizing for us the very necessary aspect of the intelligence which links the matter aspect and the spiritual, and blends them into one coherent whole. Perhaps by the union of these three lines of science, religion, and philosophy, we may get a working knowledge of the truth as it is, remembering at the same time that truth lies within ourselves. No one man's expression of the truth is the whole expression, and the sole purpose of thought is to enable us to build constructively for ourselves and to work in mental matter. I should like to outline my plan this evening, to lay the groundwork for our future talks, and to touch upon the main lines of evolution. The line that is most apparent is necessarily that which deals with the evolution of substance, with the study of the atom, and the nature of atomic matter. Next week we will touch upon that. Science has much to tell us about the evolution of the atom, and has wandered a long way during the past 50 years from the standpoint of the last century. Then the atom was regarded as an indivisible unit of substance. Now it is looked upon as a center of energy, or electric force. From the evolution of substance we are led very naturally to the evolution of forms, or of congeries of atoms, and there will then open up to us the interesting consideration of forms other than the purely material, forms existing in subtler substance, such as forms of thought, and the racial forms, and the forms of organizations. In this dual study, one of the aspects of deity will be emphasized, should you choose to use the term deity, or one of the manifestations of nature, should you prefer that less sectarian expression. We shall then be led to the consideration of the evolution of intelligence, or of the factor of mind which is working out as ordered purpose in all that we see around us. This will reveal to us a world which is not blindly going on its way, but which has back of it some plan, some coordinated scheme, some organized concept which is working itself out by means of the material form. One reason why things appear to us so difficult of comprehension is involved in the fact that we are in the midst of a transition period, and the plan is as yet imperfect. We are too close to the machinery, being ourselves an integral part of the whole. We see a little bit of it here and another little bit there, but the whole grandeur of the idea is not apparent to us. We may have a vision, we may have a high moment of revelation, but when we contact the reality on every side, we question the possibility of the ideal materializing, for the intelligent relationship between the form and that which utilizes it seems so far from adjustment. The recognition of the factor of the intelligence will inevitably lead us to the contemplation of the evolution of consciousness in its many forms, ranging all the way from those types of consciousness which we consider subhuman through the human, up to what may be logically posited, even if it may not be demonstrated, to be superhuman consciousness. The next question which will face us will be, what lies back of all these factors? Is there behind the objective form and its animating intelligence an evolution which corresponds to the I faculty, to the ego in man? Is there in nature, and in all that we see around us, the working out of the purpose of an individualized, self-conscious being? If there is such a being and such a fundamental existence, we should be able to see somewhat his intelligent activities, and to watch his plans working towards fruition. Even if we cannot prove that God is, and that the deity exists, it may be possible to say at least that the hypothesis that he exists is a reasonable one, a rational suggestion, and a possible solution of all the mysteries we see around us. But to do that, it has to be demonstrated that there is an intelligent purpose working through forms of every kind, through races and nations, and through all that we see manifesting in modern civilization. The steps that purpose has taken, and the gradual growth of the plan, will have to be demonstrated, and from that demonstration we shall perhaps be able to see what lies ahead for us in the coming stages. Let us for a minute consider what we mean by the words evolutionary process. They are constantly being used, and the average man well knows that the word evolution suggests an unfolding from within outwards, and the unrolling from an inner center. But we need to define the idea more clearly, and thus get a better concept. One of the best definitions which I have come across is that which defines evolution as the unfolding of a continually increasing power to respond. Here we have a definition that is very illuminating as we consider the matter aspect of manifestation. It involves the conception of vibration and of response to vibration. And though we may in time have to discard the term matter and employ some such expression as force center, the concept still holds good, and the response of the center to stimulation is even more accurately to be seen. In considering human consciousness, this same definition is of real value. It involves the idea of a gradually increasing realization of the developing response of the subjective life to its environment, and it leads us eventually on and up to the ideal of a unified existence, which will be the synthesis of all the lines of evolution, and to a conception of a central life, or force, which blends and holds together all the evolving units, whether they are units of matter, such as the atom of the chemist and the physicist, or units of consciousness, such as human beings. This is evolution, the process which unfolds the life within all units, the developing urge which eventually merges all units and all groups, until you have that sum total of manifestation which can be called nature, or God, and which is the aggregate of all the states of consciousness. This is the God to whom the Christian refers when he says, "In him we live and move and have our being." This is the force or energy which the scientist recognizes, and this is the universal mind, or the oversoul of the philosopher. This again is the intelligent will which controls, formulates, binds, constructs, develops, and brings all to an ultimate perfection. This is that perfection which is inherent in matter itself, and the tendency which is latent in the atom, in man, and in all that is. This interpretation of the evolutionary process does not look upon it as the result of an outside deity pouring his energy and wisdom upon a waiting world, but rather as something which is latent within that world itself, that lies hidden at the heart of the atom of chemistry, within the heart of man himself, within the planet, and within the solar system. It is that something which drives all on toward the goal, and is the force which is gradually bringing order out of chaos, ultimate perfection out of temporary imperfection, good out of seeming evil, and out of darkness and disaster that which we shall someday recognize as beautiful, right, and true. It is all that we have visioned and conceived of in our highest and best moments. Evolution has also been defined as cyclic development, and this definition brings me to a thought which I am very anxious that we should thoroughly grasp. Nature repeats continuously until certain definite ends have been reached, certain concrete results have been brought about, and certain responses made to vibration. It is by the recognition of this accomplishment that the intelligent purpose of indwelling existence can be demonstrated. The method whereby this is achieved is that of discrimination, or of intelligent choice. There are, in the textbooks of different schools, many words which are used to convey the same general idea, such as natural selection or attraction and repulsion. I would like, if possible, to avoid technical terms, because they are used by one school of thought to mean one thing, and by another something different. If we can find a word similar in intent, yet not tied to any particular line of thought, we may find fresh light thrown upon our problem. Attraction and repulsion in the solar system is but the discriminating faculty of the atom, or of man, demonstrating in the planets and the sun. It will be found in atoms of all kinds. We can call it adaptation if we so choose, or the power to grow and to adapt the unit to its environment through the rejection of certain factors and the acceptance of others. It shows itself in man as free will, or the power to choose, and in the spiritual man, it can be seen as the tendency to sacrifice. For a man then chooses a particular line of action in order to benefit the group to which he belongs, and rejects that which is purely selfish. We might finally define evolution as ordered change and constant mutation. It demonstrates in the ceaseless activity of the unit or the atom, the interaction between groups, and the endless play of one force or type of energy upon another. We have seen that evolution, whether it is of matter, of intelligence, of consciousness, or of spirit, consists in an ever-increasing power to respond to vibration, that it progresses through constant change by the practice of a selective policy or the use of the discriminative faculty, and by the method of psychic development or repetition. The stages which distinguish the evolutionary process might be broadly divided into three, corresponding to the stages in the life of a human being: childhood, adolescence, and maturity. Where man is concerned, these stages can be traced in the human unit or in the race, and as the civilizations pass on and increase, it should surely become possible to trace the same threefold idea in the human family as a whole, and thus ascertain the divine objective through the study of his image, or reflection, man. We might express these three stages in more scientific terms, and link them with the three schools of thought earlier referred to, studying them as A, the stage of atomic energy; B, the stage of group coherency; C, the stage of unified or synthetic existence. Let me see if I can make my meaning clear. The stage of atomic energy is largely that which concerns the material side of life and corresponds to the childhood period in the life of a man or a race. It is the time of realism, of intense activity, of development by action above all else, or pure self-centeredness and self-interest. It produces the materialistic point of view and leads inevitably to selfishness. It involves the recognition of the atom as being entirely self-contained, and similarly of the human unit as having a separate life apart from all other units and with no relationship to others. Such a stage can be seen in the little evolved races of the world, in small children, and in those who are little developed. They are normally self-centered. Their energies are concerned with their own life. They are occupied with the objective and with that which is tangible. They are characterized by a necessary and protective selfishness. It is a most necessary stage in the development and perpetuation of the race. Out of this selfish atomic period grows another stage, that of group coherency. This involves the building up of forms or species until you have something coherent and individualized in itself as a whole, yet which is composed of many lesser individualities and forms. In connection with the human being, it corresponds to his awakening realization of responsibility and to his recognition of his place within the group. It necessitates an ability on his part to recognize a life greater than himself, whether that life is called God, or whether it is simply regarded as the life of the group to which a man, as a unit, belongs, that great identity of which we are each a part. This corresponds to the school of thought which we called the supernatural, and it must be succeeded in time by a truer and a wider concept. As we have already seen, the first or atomic stage developed by means of selfishness, or the self-centered life of the atom, whether the atom of substance or the human atom. The second stage grows to perfection by the sacrifice of the unit to the good of the many, and of the atom to the group in which it has place. This stage is something which we, as yet, know practically little about, and is what we often vision and hope for. The third stage lies a long way ahead, and may be considered by many a vain chimera. But some of us have a vision which, even if unattainable at present, is logically possible if our premises are correct, and our foundation is rightly laid. It is that of unified existence. Not only will there be the separate units of consciousness, not only the differentiated atoms within the form, not only will there be the group made up of a multiplicity of identities, but we shall have the aggregate of all forms, of all groups, and of all states of consciousness blended, unified, and synthesized into a perfected whole. This whole you may call the solar system, you may call it nature, or you may call it God. Names matter not. It corresponds to the adult stage in the human being. It is analogous to the period of maturity, and to that stage wherein a man is supposed to have a definite purpose and life work, and a clear-cut plan in view, which he is working out by the aid of his intelligence. In these talks, I should like, if I can, to show that something like this is going on in the solar system, in the planet, in the human family, and in the atom. I trust that we can prove that there is an intelligence underlying all, and that from separation will come union, produced through blending and merging into group formation, and that eventually from the many groups will be seen emerging the one perfect, fully conscious whole, composed of myriads of separated identities, animated by one purpose and one will. If this is so, what is the next practical step ahead for those who come to this realization? How can we make practical application of this ideal to our own lives and ascertain our immediate duty so that we may participate in and consciously further the plan? In the cosmic process, we have our tiny share, and each day of activity should see us playing our part with intelligent understanding. Our first aim should surely be self-realization through the practice of discrimination. We must learn to think clearly for ourselves, to formulate our own thoughts and to manipulate our own mental processes. We must learn to know what we think and why we think it, to find out the nature of our life, and to experiment. We find ourselves and know ourselves through the method of discrimination and of selection and rejection. When this is the practice of our lives and the habit of our thought, we can then endeavor to find out the meaning of group consciousness through the study of the law of sacrifice. Not only must we find ourselves through the primary childhood stage of selfishness, and surely that should lie behind us. Not only should we learn to distinguish between the real and the unreal through the practice of discrimination, but we should endeavor to pass on from that to something very much better. For us, the immediate goal should be to find the group to which we may belong. We do not belong to all groups, nor can we consciously realize our place in the one great body, but we can find some group in which we have our place, some body of people with whom we can cooperate and work, some brother or brothers whom we can succor and assist. It really involves the conscious contacting of the ideal of brotherhood, and until we have evolved to the stage where our concept is universal, it means finding the particular set of brothers whom we can love and help by means of the law of sacrifice, and by the transmutation of selfishness into loving service. Thus we can cooperate in the general purpose and participate in the mission of the group. Next week we will follow out some of these ideas in connection with the evolution of substance and the part it plays in the general scheme. Lecture 2. The Evolution of Substance. It is obvious that in such a series of lectures as this, it would be impossible to deal adequately in any way with this stupendous subject, even were I equipped to lecture on such a fundamentally scientific matter. Again, if the conclusions of science were definite upon the evolution of matter, the topic would be, even then, too vast to handle. But they are not, and hence the further complicating of the subject. Therefore, I want to preface my remarks tonight by stating that my aim is to speak particularly for those who have no scientific training of any kind, and to give them a general concept of the usually accepted ideas. I seek then to make some suggestions which we may find helpful in adjusting our minds to this great problem of matter. Usually, when the substance aspect of manifestation has been considered, it has been as a thing apart, and it is only lately that what I might call the psychology of matter is beginning to come before the mind of the public through the investigations and conclusions of the broader-minded scientists. You will remember that last week I endeavored, in a broad and general way, to point out to you that there were three lines of approach to the study of the material universe. There is the line which considers only the materialistic aspect, and is occupied only with that which can be seen, which is tangible, and which can be proven. A second line is that of supernaturalism, which recognizes not so much the material side of things as that which is called divine. It deals with the life side and with the spirit aspect, viewing that life as a power extraneous to the solar system and to man, and positing that power as a great creative agent, who creates and guides the objective universe, and yet is outside of it. These two lines of thought can be seen upheld by the frankly materialistic scientist, the orthodox Christian, and the deist of every faith. I indicated next a third line of approach to the problem, and we called it the idealistic concept. It recognizes the material form, but sees also the life within it, and it posits a consciousness or intelligence which is evolving by means of that outer form. You will find, I think, that that is the line which I shall emphasize and stress in these lectures. No speaker is able, after all, to dissociate himself entirely from his own point of view, and in these talks I have set myself the task of working along this third line, for to me it synthesizes the other two, and adds certain concepts which produce a coherent whole when merged with the other two. It is for you to decide if this third standpoint is logical, reasonable, and clear. The most common fact in life for all of us is that of the material world, that world which we can see and contact by means of the five senses, and which is called by the metaphysical thinkers the not-self, or that which is objective to each one of us. As we all know, the work of the chemist is to reduce all known substances to their very simplest elements, and it was thought not long ago that this had been satisfactorily accomplished. The conclusions of the chemist placed the number of the known elements between 70 and 80. About 20 years ago, however, in 1898, a new element was discovered which was called radium, and this discovery entirely revolutionized the world's thought about matter and substance. If you will go to the textbooks of the last century, or search the old dictionaries, seeking for the definition of the atom, for instance, you will usually find Newton quoted. He defined the atom as a hard, indivisible ultimate particle, a something which was incapable of further subdivision. This was considered to be the ultimate atom in the universe, and was called by the scientists of the Victorian era the foundation stone of the universe. They considered they had gone as far back as it was possible to go, and that they had discovered what lay back of all manifestation and of objectivity itself. But when radium and the other radioactive substances had been discovered, an entirely new aspect of the situation had to be faced. It became apparent that what was considered the ultimate particle was not so at all. As you now have the definition of the atom, I am quoting from the Standard Dictionary, it is, an atom is a center of force, a phase of electrical phenomena, a center of energy, active through its own internal makeup, and giving off energy or heat or radiation. Therefore, an atom is, as Lord Kelvin in 1867 thought it would ultimately turn out to be, a vortex ring, or center of force, and not a particle of what we understand as tangible substance. This ultimate particle of matter is now demonstrated to be composed of a positive nucleus of energy, surrounded, just as is the Sun by the planets, with many electrons or negative corpuscles, thus subdividing the atom of earlier science into numerous lesser bodies. The elements differ according to the number and arrangement of these negative electrons around their positive nucleus, and they rotate or move around this central charge of electricity as our planetary system rotates around the Sun. Professor Soddy, in one of his latest books, has pointed out that in the atom is to be seen an entire solar system. The central Sun can be recognized, with the planets pursuing their orbital paths around it. It would be apparent to each of us that when this definition of the atom is contemplated and studied, an entirely new concept of substance comes before us. Dogmatic assertions are therefore out of order, for it is realized that perhaps the next discovery may reveal to us the fact that the electrons themselves may be worlds within worlds, An interesting speculation along these lines is to be found in a book by one of our scientific thinkers, in which he suggests that we might be able to divide and subdivide the electron itself into what he calls psychons, and thus be led into realms which are not now considered physical. That may be only a dream, but the thing that I am seeking to impress upon my mind and yours is that we scarcely know where we stand in scientific thought, any more than we know where we stand in the religious and economic world. Everything is passing through a period of transition. The old order changeth. The old way of looking at things is proving false or inadequate. The old expressions of thought seem futile. All that the wise man can do just now is to reserve his opinion, ascertain for himself what appeals to him as truth, and endeavor then to synthesize that particular aspect of universal truth with that aspect which has been accepted by his brother. The atom, then, can be predicated as resolving itself into electrons, and can be expressed in terms of force or energy. When you have a center of energy or activity, you are involved in a dual concept. You have that which is the cause of movement or energy, and that which it energizes or actuates. This brings us directly into the field of psychology, because energy or force is ever regarded as a quality, and where you have a quality you are really considering the field of psychic phenomena. There are certain terms in use when considering substance which are continuously appearing, and about which there is a wide diversity of definition. In looking over one scientific book last week, it was discouraging to find the author pointing out that the atom of the chemist, of the physicist, of the mathematician, and of the metaphysician were four totally different things. That is another reason why it is not possible to be dogmatic in dealing with these questions. Nevertheless, rightly or wrongly, I have a very definite hypothesis to put before you. When we talk about radium, we are, in all probability, venturing into the realm of etheric substance, the region of ether, or of protyle. Protyle was a word coined by Sir William Crookes, and is defined by him as follows. Protyle is a word analogous to protoplasm, to express the idea of the original primal matter before the evolution of the chemical elements. The word I have ventured to use for this purpose is compounded of a Greek word earlier than, and the stuff of which things are made. We are, therefore, throwing the concept of matter back to where the Oriental school has always put it, to primordial stuff, to that which the Orientalist calls primordial ether, though we must ever remember that the ether of science is many, many removes from the primordial ether of the Oriental occultist. We are led back to that intangible something which is the basis of the objective thing, which you and I can see and touch and handle. The word substance itself means that which stands under, or which lies back of things. All, therefore, that we can predicate in connection with the ether of space is that it is the medium in which energy or force functions, or makes itself felt. When we are talking in these lectures of energy and force, and of matter and substance, we can separate them in our minds thus. We speak about energy and substance when we are considering that which is as yet intangible, and we use force in connection with matter when dealing with that aspect of the objective which our scientists are definitely studying. Substance is the ether in one of its many grades, and is that which lies back of matter itself. When we speak of energy, there must be that which energizes, that which is the source of energy, and the origin of that force which demonstrates in matter. It is here that I seek to lay the emphasis. Whence comes this energy, and what is it? Scientists are recognizing ever more clearly that atoms possess qualities, and it would be interesting if one were to take the different scientific books dealing with the subject of atomic matter, and note which of the many and varying terms applied to them could be applied to a human being also. On a small scale, I have attempted this, and found it very illuminating. First of all, as we know, the atom is spoken of as possessing energy, and the power to change from one mode of activity to another. One writer has remarked that absolute intelligence thrills through every atom in the world. In this connection, I want to point out to you what Edison is reported by an interviewer as having said in Harper's Magazine for February 1890, and which is enlarged upon in the Scientific American for October 1920. In the earlier instance, he is quoted as follows: "I do not believe that matter is inert, acted upon by an outside force. To me it seems that every atom is possessed by a certain amount of primitive intelligence. Look at the thousands of ways in which atoms of hydrogen combine with those of other elements, forming the most diverse substances. Do you mean to say that they do this without intelligence? Atoms in harmonious and useful relation assume beautiful or interesting shapes and colors, or give forth a pleasant perfume, as if expressing their satisfaction gathered together in certain forms. The atoms constitute animals of the lower order. Finally, they combine in man, who represents the total intelligence of all the atoms. But where does this intelligence come from originally? Asked the interviewer. From some power greater than ourselves, Edison answered. Do you believe, then, in an intelligent creator, a personal God? Certainly. The existence of such a God can, to my mind, be proved from chemistry. In the long interview quoted last year in the Scientific American, Edison laid down a number of most interesting surmises from which I have culled the following. 1. Life, like matter, is indestructible. 2. Our bodies are composed of myriads of infinitesimal entities, each in itself a unit of life, just as the atom is composed of myriads of electrons. 3. The human being acts as an assemblage rather than as a unit. The body and mind express the vote or voice of the life entities. 4. The life entities build according to a plan. If a part of the life organism be mutilated, they rebuild exactly as before. 7. Science admits the difficulty of drawing the line between the inanimate and the animate. Perhaps the life entities extend their activities to crystals and chemicals. 9. The life entities live forever, so that to this extent at least the eternal life which many of us hope for is a reality. In an address given by Sir Clifford Allbutt, President of the British Medical Association, as reported in the Literary Digest of February 26, 1921, he speaks of the ability of the microbe to select and reject, and in the course of his remarks he says, when the microbe finds itself in the host body, it may be wholly out of tune, or wholly in tune with any or all cells that it approaches. In either case, presumably nothing morbid would happen. Morbid happenings would lie between this microbe and body cells within its range, but not in tune with it. Now there seems to be reason to suppose that a microbe, on its approach to a body cell only just out of its range, may try this way and that to get a hitch on. If so, the microbe, at first innocuous, would become noxious. So on the other hand, body cells may educate themselves to vibrate in harmony with a microbe before dissonant, or there may be mutual interchange and co-adaptation. But if things be so, surely we are face to face with a marvelous and far-reaching faculty, the faculty of choice, and this rising from the utter bottom of biology to the summit, formative faculty, autodetermination, or if you please, mind. In the year 1895, Sir William Crookes, one of our greatest scientists, gave an interesting lecture before a body of chemists in Great Britain, in which he dealt with the ability of the atom to choose its own path, to reject and to select, and showed that natural selection can be traced in all forms of life, from the then ultimate atom up through all forms of being. In another scientific article, the atom is further accused of having sensation as well. The recent contest as to the nature of atoms, which we must regard as in some form or other the ultimate factors in all physical and chemical processes, seems to be capable of easiest solution by the conception that these very minute passes possess, as centers of force, a persistent soul, that every atom has sensation and power of movement. Tyndall has likewise pointed out that even the very atoms themselves seem to be instinct with the desire for life. If you take these different qualities of the atom, energy, intelligence, ability to select and reject, to attract and repulse, sensation, movement, and desire, you have something which is very much like the psychology of a human being, only within a more limited radius and of a more circumscribed degree. Have we not, therefore, really got back to what might be termed the psyche of the atom? We have found that the atom is a living entity, a little vibrant world, and that within its sphere of influence other little lives are to be found, and this very much in the same sense as each of us is an entity, or positive nucleus of force or life, holding within our sphere of influence other lesser lives, that is, the cells of our body. What can be said of us can be said in degree of the atom. Let us extend our idea of the atom a little further, and touch upon what may be fundamentally the cause, and hold the solution of the world problems. This concept of the atom as a positive demonstration of energy, holding within its range of activity its polar opposite, can be extended not only to every type of atom, but also to a human being. We can view each unit of the human family as a human atom, for in man you have simply a larger atom. He is a center of positive force, holding within the periphery of his sphere of influence the cells of his body. He shows discrimination, intelligence, and energy. The difference lies but in degree. He is possessed of a wider consciousness, and vibrates to a larger measure than the little atom of the chemist. We might extend the idea still further and consider a planet as an atom. Perhaps there is a life within the planet that holds the substance of the sphere, and all forms of life upon it to itself as a coherent whole, and that has a specific extent of influence. This may sound like a wild speculation, yet, judging from analogy, there may perhaps be within the planetary sphere an entity whose consciousness is as far removed from that of man as the consciousness of man is from that of the atom of chemistry. This thought can again be carried still further, till it includes the atom of the solar system. There, at the heart of the solar system, the sun, you have the positive center of energy, holding the planets within its sphere of influence. If you have within the atom intelligence, if you have within the human being intelligence, if you have within the planet an intelligence controlling all its functions, may it not be logical to extend the idea and predicate a still greater intelligence back of that larger atom, the solar system? This brings us ultimately to the standpoint which the religious world has always held, that of there being a God or divine being. Where the Orthodox Christian would say with reverence, God, the scientist, with equal reverence would say energy, yet they would both mean the same. Where the idealistic teacher would speak of the God within the human form, others with equal accuracy would speak of the energizing faculty of man, which drives him into activity of a physical, emotional, or mental nature. Everywhere are to be found centers of force, and the idea can be extended from such a force center as a chemical atom, on and up through varying grades and groups of such intelligent centers, to man, and thence to the life which is manifesting through the system. Thus is demonstrated a marvelous and synthesized whole. St. Paul may have had something of this sort in mind when he spoke about the heavenly man. By the body of Christ, he surely means all those units of the human family who are held within his sphere of influence, and who go to the constitution of his body, as the aggregate of the physical cells form the physical body of the man. What is needed in these days of religious upheaval is that these fundamental truths of Christianity should be demonstrated to be scientific truths. We need to make religion scientific. There is a very interesting Sanskrit writing many thousands of years old, which I am venturing to quote here. It says, "Every form on earth and every speck, atom in space, strives in its efforts towards self-formation, and to follow the model placed for it in the heavenly man. The involution and the evolution of the atom have all one and the same object, man. Do you note what a large hope this concept opens out before us? Not one atom of matter, showing latent intelligence, discrimination, and selective power, but will in the course of eons reach that more advanced stage of consciousness which we call human. Surely then the human atom may equally be supposed to progress to something still more widely conscious, and eventually reach the stage of development of those great entities whose bodies are planetary atoms. And for them as well, what is there? Attainment of that all-including state of consciousness which we call God, or the solar logos. Surely this teaching is logical and practical. The old occult injunction which said to a man, "Know thyself, for in thyself is to be found all that there is to be known," is still the rule for the wise student. If each one of us would scientifically regard ourselves as centers of force, holding the matter of our bodies within our radius of control, and thus working through and in them, we should have a hypothesis whereby the entire cosmic scheme could be interpreted. If, as Einstein hints, our entire solar system is but a sphere, coloring is given to the deduction that it, in its turn, may be but a cosmic atom. Thus we would have a place within a still larger scheme, and have a center around which our system rotates, and in which it is as the electron to the atom. We have been told by astronomers that our entire system is probably revolving around a central point in the heavens. Thus, the basic idea which I have sought to emphasize can be traced all the way up, through the atom of the chemist and physicist, through man, through the energizing life of a planet, up to the logos, the deity of our solar system, the intelligence or life which lies back of all manifestation or of nature, and on to some greater scheme in which even our God has to play his part and to find his place. It is a wonderful picture if true. I cannot deal tonight with the different developments of this intelligence animating all atoms, but I should like for a moment to take up what is perhaps the method of their evolution, and this from the human standpoint, which concerns us the most intimately, remembering ever that what is true of any one atom should be true in greater or less degree of all. In considering broadly the atoms of the solar system, including the system itself, there are two things noticeable. The first is the intense life and activity of the atom itself, and its internal atomic energy, and the second is its interaction with other atoms, repulsing some and attracting others. Perhaps then we may deduce from these facts that the method of evolution for every atom is due to two causes: the internal life of the atom itself, and its interaction or intercourse with other atoms. These two stages are apparent in the evolution of the human atom. The first was emphasized by the Christ when he said, "The kingdom of God is within you," thus pointing all human atoms to the center of life or energy within themselves, and teaching them that from and through that center they must expand and grow. Each one of us is conscious of being centered within himself. He considers everything from his own standpoint, and the outer happenings are mostly interesting just insofar as they concern himself. We deal with things as they affect us personally, and all that occurs to others at a certain stage of our evolution is important only as it concerns ourselves. That is the present stage of many, and is characteristic of the majority. It is the period of intense individualism, and that in which the I concept is of paramount importance. It involves much internal activity. The second way the human atom grows is through its interaction with all other atoms, and this is something which is only just beginning to dawn upon the human intelligence and to assume its just importance. We are only beginning to realize the relative significance of competition and of cooperation, and are on the verge of realizing that we cannot live our life selfishly and apart from the group in which we find a place. We are commencing to learn that if our brother is held back and is not making progress, and if the other human atoms are not vibrating as they should, every atom in the body corporate is affected. None of us will be complete until all other units have achieved their fullest and most complete development. Next week, I shall enlarge a little upon this, when I take up the question of form building. I only seek tonight, in bringing this lecture to a conclusion, to bring to your consciousness an appreciation of the place we each hold in the general scheme, and to enable us to realize the importance of the interaction which goes on between all atoms. I seek to point out the necessity of finding for ourselves our place in the group to which we naturally belong, in which we are as the electrons to the positive charge. This makes the entire hypothesis not merely a wild dream, but a practically useful ideal. If it is true that all the cells of our bodies, for instance, are the electrons which we hold coherently together, and if we are the energizing factor within the material form, it is of prime importance that we recognize that fact and deal rightly and scientifically with those forms and their atoms. This involves the practical care of the physical body and the wise adaptation of all our energy to the work to be done and to the nature of our objective. It necessitates the judicious utilization of that aggregate of cells which is our instrument or tool and our sphere of manifestation. This is something of which we as yet know little. When this thought is developed and the human being is recognized as a force center, the attitude of people towards their work and mode of living will be fundamentally altered. The point of view of the medical world, for instance, will be changed, and people will study the right methods of utilizing energy. Disease through ignorance will no longer exist, and the methods of transmitting force will be studied and followed. We shall then be truly intelligent atoms, a thing we as yet are not. Again, we shall not only be practical in the handling of our material bodies, because we understand their constitution, but we shall consciously find our place within the group and direct our energy to the benefiting of the group, and not as now, to the furthering of our own ends. Many atoms have not only an internal life of their own, but also radiate, and as radioactivity is gradually understood, so the study of man as a center of active radiation will also come into being. We are standing these days on the verge of wonderful discoveries. We are nearing a marvelous synthesis of the thought of the world. We are advancing towards that period when science and religion will come to the help of each other, and when philosophy will add its quota to the understanding of the truth. The use of the imagination will frequently open up a wonderful vision, and if this imagination is based on essentials and starts with a logical hypothesis, perhaps it will lead us to the solution of some of the mysteries and problems which are distressing the world now. If things are to us mysterious and inexplicable, may it not be because of that great entity who is manifesting through our planet and who is working out a definite purpose and plan, just as you and I may be doing in our lives. At times we carry our physical vehicle into situations and bring about difficulties in connection with it, which are both painful and distressing. Granted the hypothesis upon which we are working, it may therefore be logical to surmise that the great intelligence of our planet is similarly carrying his entire body of manifestation, which includes the human family, into situations which are distressing to the atoms. Surely it may be logical to suppose that the mystery of all we see around us may be hidden in the will and intelligent purpose of that greater life, who works through our planet as man works through the medium of his physical body, and yet who is himself but an atom within a still larger sphere, which is indwelt by the solar logos, the intelligence, who is the sum total of all the lesser lives. Lecture 3. The Evolution of Form, Oregon Group Evolution. I want to enlarge tonight upon the basic idea of the unity of consciousness, or of intelligence, as developed somewhat in the lecture last week, and to extend the concept still further. It has been said that all evolution proceeds from homogeneous, through heterogeneity, back again to homogeneity, and it has been pointed out that evolution is a continually accelerating march of all the particles of the universe, which leads them simultaneously, by a path sown with destruction, but uninterrupted and unpausing, from the material atom to that universal consciousness in which omnipotence and omniscience are realized. In a word, to the full realization of the absolute of God. This proceeds from those minute diversifications which we call molecules and atoms, up to their aggregate as they are built into forms, and continues on through the building of those forms into greater forms, until you have a solar system in its entirety. All has proceeded under law, and the same basic laws govern the evolution of the atom as the evolution of a solar system. The macrocosm repeats itself in man, the microcosm, and the microcosm is again reflected in all lesser atoms. These remarks in the previous lecture concern themselves primarily with the material manifestation of a solar system, but I shall seek to lay the emphasis in our future talks principally upon what we might call the psychical evolution, or the gradual demonstration and evolutionary unfoldment of that subjective intelligence or consciousness which lies behind the objective manifestation. As usual, we will handle this lecture in 4 divisions. First, we will take the subject of the evolutionary process, which in this particular case is the evolution of the form, or the group. Then the method of group development. Next, we will consider the stages that are followed during the cycle of evolution, and finally we will conclude with an attempt to be practical and to gather out of our conclusions some lesson to apply to the daily life. The first thing necessary for us to do is to consider somewhat the question of what a form really is. If we turn to a dictionary, we will find the word defined as follows: the external shape or configuration of a body. In this definition, the emphasis is laid upon its externality, upon its tangibility and exoteric manifestation. This thought is also brought out if the root meaning of the word manifestation is carefully studied. It connies from 2 Latin words meaning to touch or handle by the hand, manus the hand and fender, to touch. And the idea then brought to our minds is the triple thought that that which is manifested is that which can be felt, contacted, and realized as tangible. Yet in both these interpretations, the most vital part of the concept is lost sight of, and we must look elsewhere for a truer definition. To my mind, Plutarch conveys the idea of the manifestation of the subjective through the medium of the objective form in a much more illuminating way than does the dictionary. He says, "An idea is a being incorporeal, which has no subsistence by itself, but gives figure and form unto shapeless matter, and becomes the cause of manifestation." Here you have a most interesting sentence, and one of real occult significance. It is a sentence which will repay careful study and consideration, for it embodies a concept that concerns itself not only with that little manifestation, the atom of the chemist and the physicist, but of all forms that are constituted by their means, including the manifestation of a human being and of the deity of a solar system. That great life, that all-embracing universal mind, that vibrant center of energy, and that great enfolding consciousness, whom we call God, or Force, or the Logos, the existence who is expressing himself through the medium of the solar system. In the Christian Bible, the same thought is borne out by St. Paul in a letter to the church at Ephesus. In the 2nd chapter of the epistle to the Ephesians, he says, "We are his workmanship." Literally, the correct translation from the Greek is, "We are his poem or idea." And the thought in the mind of the apostle is that through the medium of every human life, or in the aggregate of lives which compose a solar system, God is, through the form, whatever it may be, working out an idea, a specific concept, or detailed poem. A man is an embodied thought, and this is also the concept latent in the definition of Plutarch. You have therein first the idea of a self-conscious entity. You have then to recognize the thought or purpose which that entity is seeking to express. And finally, you have the body or form, which is the sequential result. The term logos, translated as the Word, is frequently used in the New Testament in speaking of the deity. The outstanding passage in which this is the case is the 1st chapter of St. John's Gospel, where the words occur, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." Let us consider for a minute the meaning of the expression. Its literal translation is "the Word," and it has been defined as the rendering in objective expression of a concealed thought. If you take any noun or similar word, for instance, and study its objective significance, you will find that always a definite thought is conveyed to the mind, involving purpose, intent, or perhaps some abstract concept. If this same method of study can be extended to include the idea of the deity or the Logos, much light may be gained upon this abstruse question of the manifestation of God, the central intelligence, by the means of the material form, whether we see him manifested through the tiny form of a chemical atom or that gigantic physical body of his we call a solar system. We found in our lecture last week that there was one thing that could be predicated of all atoms, and that scientists everywhere were coming to recognize one distinguishing characteristic. They have been shown to possess symptoms of mind and a rudimentary form of intelligence. The atom demonstrates the quality of discrimination, of selective power, and of ability to attract or repulse. It may seem curious to use the word intelligence in connection with an atom of chemistry, for instance, but nevertheless the root meaning of the word embodies this idea perfectly. It comes from 2 Latin words, inter, between, and legere, to choose. Intelligence, therefore, is the capacity to think or choose, to select, and to discriminate. It is in reality that abstract, inexplicable something which lies back of the great law of attraction and repulsion, one of the basic laws of manifestation. This fundamental faculty of intelligence characterizes all atomic matter, and also governs the building up of forms, or the aggregation of atoms. We have earlier dealt with the atom per se, but have in no way considered its building into form, or into that totality of forms which we call a kingdom in nature. We have considered somewhat the essential nature of the atom, and its prime characteristic of intelligence, and have laid our emphasis upon that out of which all the different forms as we know them are built, all forms in the mineral kingdom, in the vegetable kingdom, in the animal kingdom, and in the human. In the sum total of all forms you have the totality of nature, as generally understood. Let us now extend our idea from the individual forms that go to the constitution of any of these 4 kingdoms of nature, and view them as providing that still greater form which we call the kingdom itself, and thus view that kingdom as a conscious unit, forming a homogeneous whole. Thus each kingdom in nature may be considered as providing a form through which a consciousness of some kind or grade can manifest. Thus also the aggregate of animal forms composes that greater form which we designate the kingdom itself, and this animal kingdom likewise has its place within a still greater body. Through that kingdom a conscious life may be seeking expression, and through the aggregate of kingdoms a still greater subjective life may be seeking manifestation. In all these kingdoms which we are considering, mineral, vegetable, animal, and human, we have three factors again present, provided, of course, that the basis of our reasoning is correct. First, that the original atom is itself a life. Secondly, that all forms are built up of a multiplicity of lives, and thus a coherent whole is provided through which a subjective entity is working out a purpose. Thirdly, that the central life within the form is its directing impulse, the source of its energy, the origin of its activity, and that which holds the form together as a unity. This thought can be well worked out in connection with man, for instance. For the purposes of our lecture, man can be defined as that central energy, life, or intelligence, who works through a material manifestation or form, this form being built up of myriads of lesser lives. In this connection, a curious phenomenon has been frequently noticed at the time of death. It was brought very specially to my notice some years ago by one of the ablest surgical nurses of India. She had for a long time been an atheist, but had begun to question the ground of her unbelief after several times witnessing this phenomenon. She stated, the moment of death in several cases, a flash of light had been seen by her issuing from the top of the head, and that in one particular case, that of a girl of apparently very advanced spiritual development and great purity and holiness of life, the room had appeared to be lit up momentarily by electricity. Again, not long ago, several of the leading members of the medical profession in a large Middle West city were approached by an interested investigator by letter, and asked if they would be willing to state if they had noted any peculiar phenomena at the moment of death. Several replied by saying that they had observed a bluish light issuing from the top of the head, and one or two added that they had heard a snap in the region of the head. In this last instance, we have a corroboration of the statement in Ecclesiastes, where the loosing of the silver cord is mentioned, or the breaking of that magnetic link which unites the indwelling entity or thinker to his vehicle of expression. In both the types of cases above mentioned can apparently be seen an ocular demonstration of the withdrawal of the central light or life, and the consequent disintegration of the form and the scattering of the myriad lesser lives. It may therefore seem to some of us a logical hypothesis that just as the atom of chemistry is a tiny sphere, or form, with a positive nucleus, which holds rotating around it the negative electrons, so all forms in all the kingdoms of nature are of a similar structure, differing only in degree of consciousness or intelligence. We can therefore regard the kingdoms themselves as the physical expression of some great subjective life, and can by logical steps come to the recognition that every unit in the human family is an atom in the body of that greater unit, who has been called in some of the scriptures the heavenly man. Thus we arrive finally at the concept that the solar system is but the aggregate of all kingdoms and all forms, and the body of a being who is expressing himself through it, and utilizing it in order to work out a definite purpose and central idea. In all these extensions of our final hypothesis, the same triplicity can be seen, an informing life or entity manifesting through a form, or a multiplicity of forms, and demonstrating discriminative intelligence. It is not possible to deal with the method whereby the forms are built up, or to enlarge upon the evolutionary process by means of which atoms are combined into forms, and the forms themselves collected into that greater unit which we call a kingdom in nature. This method might be briefly summed up in three terms: involution, or the involving of the subjective life in matter, the method whereby the indwelling entity takes to itself its vehicle of expression; evolution, or the utilization of the form by the subjective life, its gradual perfecting, and the final liberating of the imprisoned life; and the law of attraction and repulsion, whereby matter and spirit are coordinated, whereby the central life gains experience, expands its consciousness, and through the use of that particular form attains self-knowledge and self-control. All is carried forward under this basic law. In every form you have a central life or idea coming into manifestation, involving itself more and more in substance, clothing itself in a form and shape adequate to its need and requirement, utilizing that form as a means of expression, and then, in due course of time, liberating itself from the environing form in order to acquire one more suited to its need. Thus, through every grade of form, spirit or life progresses, until the path of return has been traversed and the point of origin achieved. This is the meaning of evolution, and here lies the secret of the cosmic incarnation. Eventually, spirit frees itself from form and attains liberation plus develops psychical quality and graded expansions of consciousness. We might look at these definite stages and study them very cursorily. We have in the first case the process of involution. This is the period in which the limiting of the life within the form or sheath proceeds, and it is a long, slow process, covering millions upon millions of years. This great cycle is participated in by every type of life. It concerns the life of the solar logos manifesting through a solar system. It is part of the life cycle of the planetary spirit manifesting through such a sphere as our Earth planet. It includes that life which we call human, and sweeps into the path of its energy the tiny life which functions through an atom of chemistry. It is the great process of becoming, and that which makes existence and being itself possible. This period of limitation, of a gradually increasing imprisonment, and of an ever deeper descent into matter, is succeeded by one of adaptation, in which the life and the form become intimately interrelated, and subsequent to, this is the period wherein that inner relation becomes perfected. The form is then adequate to the needs of the life and can be utilized. Then, as the life within grows and expands, it is paralleled by the crystallization of the form, which no longer suffices as a means of expression. Following upon crystallization, we have the period of disintegration. Limitation, adaptation, utilization, crystallization, and disintegration. These are the stages which cover the life of any entity or embodied idea of greater or less degree, which seeks expression through matter. Let us carry out this thought in connection with the human being. The process of limitation can be seen in the taking of a physical form, and in those early rebellious days, when a man is full of desires, aspirations, longings, and ideals, which he seems unable to express or to satisfy. Then comes the period of adaptation, wherein the man begins to utilize what he has, and to express himself as best he may through the medium of those myriads of lesser lives and intelligences which constitute his physical, his emotional, and his mental bodies. He energizes his threefold form, forcing it to carry out his behests and fulfill his purposes, and thus carry out his plan, whether for good or evil. This is succeeded by the stage in which he utilizes the form as far as in him lies, and comes to what we call maturity. Finally, in the later stages of life, we have the crystallization of the form and the man's realization of its inadequacy. Then comes the happy release, which we call death, that great moment in which the spirit in prison escapes from the confining walls of its physical form. Our ideas about death have been erroneous. We have looked upon it as the great and ultimate terror, whereas in reality it is the great escape, the entrance into a fuller measure of activity, and the release of the life from a crystallized vehicle and an inadequate form. Thoughts similar to these can be worked out in connection with all forms, and not only with those in connection with the physical body of a human being. These ideas can be applied to forms of government, forms of religion, and forms of scientific or philosophical thought. It can be seen working out in a peculiarly interesting manner in this cycle in which we live. Everything is in a state of flux. The old order changeth, and a period of transition is in progress. The old forms, in every department of thought, are disintegrating, but only in order that the life which gave them being may escape, and build for itself that which will be more satisfactory and adequate. Take, for instance, the old religious form of the Christian faith. Here I must warn you not to misunderstand me. I am not trying to prove that the spirit of Christianity is inadequate, and I am not seeking to demonstrate that its well-tried and well-proven truths are erroneous. I'm only trying to point out that the form through which that spirit seeks to express itself has somewhat served its purpose, and is proving a limitation. Those same great truths, and those same basic ideas, require a more adequate vehicle through which to function. Christian thinkers at this time need to distinguish very carefully between the vital truths of Christianity and the crystallized form of theology. The living impulse was given by the Christ. He enunciated these great and eternal truths and sent them forth to take form and meet the need of a suffering world. They were limited by the form, and there came a long period wherein that form, religious dogmas and doctrines, gradually grew and took shape. Centuries ensued wherein the form and the life seemed adapted to each other, and the Christian ideals expressed themselves through the medium of that form. Now the period of crystallization is set in, and the expanding Christian consciousness is finding the limitations of the theologians inadequate and restricting. The great fabric of dogmas and doctrines, as built up by the churchmen and theologians of the ages, must inevitably disintegrate, but only in order that the life within may escape, build for itself a better and more satisfactory means of expression, and thus measure up to the mission upon which it was sent. In the different schools of thought everywhere, the same thing can be seen. All of them are expressing some idea by means of a particular form or set of forms, and it is very necessary for us to remember that the triple life back of all forms is nevertheless but one, though the vehicles of expression are diverse and ever prove inadequate as time elapses. What then is the purpose back of this endless process of form building and this combining of the lesser forms? What is the reason of it all, and what will prove to be the goal? Surely it is the development of quality, the expansion of the consciousness, the development of the faculty of realization, the production of the powers of the psyche, or the soul, the evolution of intelligence. Surely it is the gradual demonstration of the basic idea or purpose which that great entity whom we call the Logos or God is working out through the solar system. It is the demonstration of his psychic quality, for God is intelligent love, and the fulfillment of his determined purpose, for God is intelligent loving will. For all the different grades and types of atoms, there is a goal and a purpose also. There is a goal for the atom of chemistry. There is a point of achievement for the human atone man. The planetary atom also will someday demonstrate its basic purpose, and the great idea which lies back of the solar system will someday be revealed. Is it possible for us in a few brief moments of study to get a sound conception of what that purpose may be? Perhaps we can get some broad general idea if we approach the subject with sufficient reverence and sensitiveness of outlook, bearing carefully in mind always that only the ignorant dogmatize, and only the unwise deal in detail when considering these stupendous topics. We have seen that the atom of chemistry, for instance, demonstrates the quality of intelligence. It shows symptoms of discriminative mind and the rudiments of selective capacity. Thus, the tiny life within the atomic form is demonstrating psychic quality. The atom is then built into all the different forms at varying times and stages, and each time it gains somewhat according to the force and life of the entity who ensouls that form and preserves its homogeneity. Take, for instance, the atom that goes to the building of a form in the mineral kingdom. It shows not only discriminative selective mind, but elasticity. Then in the vegetable kingdom these two qualities appear, but a third is also found, which we might call sensation of a rudimentary kind. The initial intelligence of the atom has acquired something during the transition from form to form and from kingdom to kingdom. Its responsiveness to contact and its general awareness have increased. When we come to the study of the evolution of consciousness, we can take this up in greater detail. All I am endeavoring to do tonight is to show that in the vegetable kingdom, forms built up of atoms show not only discriminative intelligence and elasticity, but also are capable of sensation, or of that which in the vegetable kingdom corresponds to emotion or feeling, emotion being but rudimentary love. Next we have the animal kingdom, in which the animal forms show not only all the above qualities, but to them is added instinct, or that which will someday blossom into mentality. Finally, we come to the human being, who shows all these qualities in far greater degree, for the fourth kingdom is but the macrocosm for the three lower. Man demonstrates intelligent activity, he is capable of emotion or love, and has added yet another factor, that of intelligent will. He is the deity of his own little system. He is not only conscious, but he is self-conscious. He builds his own body of manifestation, just as does the Logos, only on a tiny scale. He controls his little system by the great law of attraction and repulsion, as does the Logos, and he energizes it and synthesizes his threefold nature into a coherent unit. He is the 3 in 1 and the 1 in 3, just as is the Logos. There is a future for every atom in the solar system. Before the ultimate atom there lies a tremendous goal, and as the eons slip away, the life that animates that atom will pass through all the varying kingdoms of nature until it find its goal in the human kingdom. The idea might now be extended somewhat, and we might consider that great entity who is the informing life of the planet, and who holds all the different kingdoms of nature within his consciousness. May it not be possible that his intelligence, as it informs the totality of all groups and kingdoms, is the goal for man, the human atom? Perhaps as time progresses, the scope of his present realization may also be ours, and for his, as for all those great lives who inform the planets of the solar system, there may be the attainment of that tremendous reach of consciousness which characterizes that great existence who is the ensuing life of the solar system. May it not be true that among the different grades of consciousness, extending, for instance, from the atom of the chemist and physicist up to the logos of the solar system, there are no gaps and no abrupt transitions, but there is ever a gradual expansion and a gradual evolution from one form of intelligent manifestation to another, and always the life within the form gains in quality by means of the experience. When we have built this idea into our consciousness, when it is apparent to us that there is purpose and direction underlying everything, when we realize that not a single thing occurs that is not the outcome of the conscious will of some entity, and that all that happens has a definite aim and goal, then we have the clue to ourselves and to all that we see happening around us in the world. If, for instance, we realize that we have the building up and care of our physical bodies, that we have the control of our emotional nature, and the responsibility for the development of our mentality, if we realize that we are the energizing factors within our bodies, and that when we withdraw from those bodies they disintegrate and fall to pieces, then perhaps we have the clue to what the informing life of the planet may be doing, as he works through forms of every kind, continents, civilizations, religions, and organizations upon this earth, to what has gone on in the moon, which is now a disintegrating form, to what is going on in the solar system, and to what will happen in the solar system when the Logos withdraws from that which is, for him, but a temporary manifestation. Let us now make practical application of these thoughts. We are living at this time in a period in which all the forms of thought seem breaking up, in which the religious life of the peoples is no longer what it was, in which dogma and doctrine of every kind come under criticism. Many of the old forms of scientific thought are likewise disintegrating, and the foundations of the old philosophies seem to be shaken. Our lot is cast in one of the most difficult periods of the world's history, a period which is characterized by the breakup of nations, the smashing of old relationships and ties, and the apparently imminent disruption of civilization. We need to encourage ourselves by remembering that all this is occurring just because the life within those forms is becoming so strong that it finds them a prison and a limitation. And we must recollect that this transition period is the time of the greatest promise that the world has ever seen. There is no room for pessimism and despair, but only for the profoundest optimism. Many today are upset and distraught because the foundations seem to be shaken. The carefully reared and deeply cherished structures of religious thought and belief and of philosophical finding seem in danger of falling. Yet our anxiety exists simply because we have been too much engrossed with the form and too much occupied with our prison. And if disruption has set in, it is only in order that the life may build for itself new forms and thereby evolve. The work of the destroyer is as much the work of God as that of the constructor, and the great God of destruction has to smash and rend the forms in order that the work of the builder may become possible, and the spirit able more adequately to express itself. To many of us these ideas may seem novel, fantastic, and untenable. Yet even if they are only hypotheses, they may prove interesting and give us a possible clue to the mystery. We see civilizations disrupted. We see the religious fabrics tottering. We see philosophies successfully attacked. We see the foundations of material science shaken. In the different schools of thought everywhere, the same thing can be seen. All of them are expressing some idea by means of a particular form or set of forms. And it is very necessary for us to remember that the triple life back of all forms is nevertheless but one, though the vehicles of expression are diverse and ever prove inadequate as time elapses. What then is the purpose back of this endless process of form building, and this combining of the lesser forms? What is the reason of it all, and what will prove to be the goal? Surely it is the development of quality, the expansion of the consciousness, the development of the faculty of realization, the production of the powers of the psyche or the soul, the evolution of intelligence. Surely it is the gradual demonstration of the basic idea or purpose which that great entity whom we call the Logos or God is working out through the solar system. It is the demonstration of his psychic quality, for God is intelligent love, and the fulfillment of his determined purpose, for God is intelligent loving will. For all the different grades and types of atoms, there is a goal and a purpose also. There is a goal for the atom of chemistry. There is a point of achievement for the human atone man. The planetary atom also will someday demonstrate its basic purpose, and the great idea which lies back of the solar system will someday be revealed. Is it possible for us in a few brief moments of study to get a sound conception of what that purpose may be? Perhaps we can get some broad, general idea if we approach the subject with sufficient reverence and sensitiveness of outlook, bearing carefully in mind always that only the ignorant dogmatize, and only the unwise deal in detail when considering these stupendous topics. We have seen that the atom of chemistry, for instance, demonstrates the quality of intelligence. It shows symptoms of discriminative mind and the rudiments of selective capacity. Thus, the tiny life within the atomic form is demonstrating psychic quality. The atom is then built into all the different forms at varying times and stages, and each time it gains somewhat according to the force and life of the entity who ensouls that form and preserves its homogeneity. Take, for instance, the atom that goes to the building of a form in the mineral kingdom. It shows not only discriminative selective mind, but elasticity. Then in the vegetable kingdom these two qualities appear, but a third is also found, which we might call sensation of a rudimentary kind. The initial intelligence of the atom has acquired something during the transition from form to form and from kingdom to kingdom. Its responsiveness to contact and its general awareness have increased. When we come to the study of the evolution of consciousness, we can take this up in greater detail. All I'm endeavoring to do tonight is to show that in the vegetable kingdom. Yet after all, what are civilizations? What are the religions? What are the great races? Simply the forms through which the great threefold central life, who informs our planet, seeks to express himself. Just as we express ourselves through the medium of a physical, an emotional, and a mental nature, so he expresses himself through the totality of the kingdoms of nature, and through the nations, races, religions, sciences, and philosophies in existence at this time. As his life pulsates through every department of his being, we, as cells and atoms within that greater manifestation, follow each transition and are swept along from one stage to another. As time progresses and our consciousness expands, we shall enter more and more into a knowledge of his plan as he is working it out, and shall eventually be in a position to collaborate with him in his essential purpose. To sum up the central thought of this lecture, let us endeavor to realize that there is no such thing as inorganic matter, but that every atom is a life. Let us realize that all forms are living forms, and that each is but the vehicle of expression for some indwelling entity. Let us seek to comprehend that this is likewise true of the aggregate of all forms. Thus we have the clue to ourselves, and perhaps the clue to the mystery of the solar system.
Thank you for joining us on this enlightening journey through Awakened Imagination, The Consciousness of the Atom by Alice A. Bailey. We hope that Bailey's profound insights have sparked a deeper understanding of the connection between the material and the spiritual, and how the consciousness of even the smallest atom reflects the grandeur of the universe. As you reflect on the concepts discussed, consider how they might influence your own path towards greater awareness and spiritual development. The ideas presented here invite us to see ourselves as integral parts of a vast, interconnected cosmos, where every thought and action contributes to the collective consciousness. We hope this audiobook has inspired you to explore further and embrace the profound unity that underlies all existence. Continue to seek knowledge, question, and expand your consciousness, for in doing so, you contribute to the awakening of humanity as a whole. If you found this audiobook thought-provoking and enlightening, please subscribe to our channel for more content that explores the intersection of science, philosophy, and spirituality. Your journey of discovery is just beginning.